Welcome back to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Live. Make sure you smash that thumbs up on this video right now. Click that subscribe button below and scan that code. $5 a month. Become a Mets Daily Insider member. As of the postseason, we'll have exclusive member-only shows. We're going to do things a little bit differently on today's show. We're going to go to your comments from Wednesday's Mets Daily on YouTube first, before the rest of the topics of today's show, which you see on the screen. Or if you're listening to the audio, you don't see them, and it'll be a mystery of what today's topics are. I guess that's the allure. If you do listen to us on Apple or Spotify, you have no idea what the topics are coming, so it's a bit of a surprise. I like the visuals better, but I might be that ugly where you're like, I can't look at him. So let's start with your comments from yesterday's show before we get into today's topics. From Mess for Less on YouTube. Love the shirt, Jake. Thank you, Mess for Less. That is my favorite shirt. It is my button-down Sandlot shirt I wore yesterday. You know, Squints from Sandlot I interviewed years ago, like 7, 8 years ago. God, I'm getting old. And he was running a dispensary, marijuana dispensary in California. So he got out of acting. And Squints, who you remember from Sandlot, was running a dispensary. Fun fact. So thank you for that. From E. Richter 667, Best Mets Podcast. Thank you so much, E. Rich. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, listen, I don't like to call it a podcast. I guess it is. It's kind of just a vlog, a video show. I don't know what else to call it. I guess it's called a podcast. That's what I've been doing for 11 years. But I like to think it's an upgrade from the usual podcast. So thank you so much. From Shakamoto, Mets Daily Insider member. As soon as you said 2020 Giants, my ears perked up. And no physical. I'm sold on Correa. Yes, no physical. You know, one of my most listened to podcast episodes was the Mets signing Carlos Correa. And it ended up being a phantom episode because it didn't happen. That was a big controversy. From XX Killer Dog XX. I wonder if getting the casino will affect how Steve spends money this upcoming year. We will talk about that, XX, in just a bit. That's one of today's topics on the show. And from the O. Isaac, let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. From Arcade Perfect Reviews 2653. I read something about both of these guys having master's degrees in science. They're going for big brain guys. And yes, they are. These are David Stern's hires. They're not Carlos Mendoza hires. They are Stern's hires. And Stern's looks for the analytics. And I think, you know, especially when it comes to Kai Correa, it's an analytical hire. And that's unfortunately how the sport has turned. It's analytics. That doesn't mean he's not going to be good. But, you know, they do want these science guys, these big brain guys. So 100% right on that. Excuse me. From T-Bone 8730. The Mets will win the World Series because of this. Yay. I assume there's sarcasm in there, but hey, you know, coaching is very important. You look at what went wrong with the Mets. I think their coaching was brutal, and obviously players have to perform, but the coaching didn't help them. Look at the Jets. The Jets' coaching is totally inept, and they're 0-6. I mean, as much as we want to say it's on the players, it's a total team effort. There's a reason the Steelers win every single year. They're coached well. Mike Tomlin's an elite head coach. He's a Hall of Famer. So, you know, there's a reason Bill Belichick was so good with the Patriots. It wasn't just Tom Brady. It was coaching. So coaching is very important, and the Mets need a staff that's competent. They need a staff that will boost the players and motivate the players, because 162 games, guys, you need that motivation. You need that tutelage. You need to get better, because there's times where you're going to get worse, and then you need to snap out of it. And sometimes it might take something a guy says. Sometimes it might take a tip. Hey, choke up a little bit more in this situation. That completely changes a guy's season, and I think the Mets need to get that right. And I think this is a decent start. We'll see if it works, but we still got to see what other coaches they hire. And then last one from Sinful. Pete was dead last in fielding for first base. He's a DH. Listen, I've said this over and over, and I know there's controversy already. There's going to be controversy. There's people going to eat each other's heads over this Pete Alonso situation, and it's already driving me insane. But the reality is, and we're going to break it down, there is a way to replace his production. You know, when people respond with, you know, how are you going to replace him? And I say, they didn't make the playoffs with him, but how are you going to replace him? How are you going to replace him? We're going to go over that all offseason. There are ways to replace Pete Alonso where you're going to make up for his homer and RBIs. I think everyone's just expecting it to do it at one position. Mets got almost nothing out of second base, didn't get a lot out of third, got nothing out of center field. So there's multiple positions where they got no production that they're going to get better at those positions. And when you combine those positions with whoever they replace him with at first, if they do replace him, they're going to replace his production. Stop looking at just his homers and RBIs. Honestly, it's lazy. All right, let's get to today's show. Here we go. First off, you've seen the graphic on the screen. The Mets and Antoine Richardson have not agreed yet to a renewed contract. Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to get done. I think the Mets, not a blank check, but you got to give him a pay raise. Every player has clamored for Antoine Richardson, what he's done for the team on the base pass and just coaching in general. I think this guy's got to be back, and he has the opportunity to explore other opportunities. That means, hey, if someone gives him a major pay bump to be a manager, he's probably going to take it. But the Mets got to do whatever they can to keep this guy. Of this coaching staff, this is the one guy that had to be back. Carlos Mendoza didn't have to be back. None of these other coaches had to be back, and they were all canned. So Antoine Richardson's a guy that the Mets have to figure out how to get that done, because what they did in terms of stealing bases was historic this season, and every player pointed to Antoine Richardson for that. Speaking of this infield and what they do, is Alex Bregman an option? Bregman has opted out of his contract. It was 3 years, $120 million, so he got his 40. He had 2 for $80 left, and he said no. This is very much a Scott Boras client decision. If I'm Alex Bregman, I was opting into that deal. Maybe he didn't like Boston, didn't want to stay there. Maybe he feels with the Green Monster, having to, elevate the ball a bit. His home runs were down. But the reality is this: Alex Bregman is not going to get $40 million a year elsewhere. Now, he's going to get more years. He's going to get offers of 4+ years. Should the Mets, and will the Mets be one of them? I don't think so. I don't think they are. Would I do it? Probably, but I just don't see the Mets giving him, 4 for $130 or 5 for $150. I just don't see David Stearns going there in terms of still having, at the moment, McNeil, Vientos, Acuna, Mauricio, Beatty. You have 5 guys. I think 2 or 3 of them are going to be gone this offseason. McNeil and Vientos, I think, are definitely going to be off this team before next season starts. But you still have a logjam at those positions. Not to mention you do have Jet Williams, who can also play second base potentially. So I just think you have too many guys at those positions. I don't think third baseman is a true position of need for the Mets. And the reality is that's what he is. He's a third baseman. He's not really a second baseman. He's a third baseman or a DH. He's really a third baseman. So I don't think Bregman's realistic. Let me know in the comments below. Are you in on Alex Bregman? I do love his postseason success. I do love that pedigree. He is a champion. But I just don't see a world where David Stearns pays him, considering that's really not the biggest Mets need this offseason. Finally, Steve Cohen's casino is coming closer to reality. MGM in Yonkers has opted out. MGM Empire City was planning to open a $2.3 billion casino and resort in Yonkers, and they were supposed to be one of the favorites. But on Tuesday, they dropped their bid after years of planning, citing that the current plan challenges the returns we initially anticipated from this project. They also said that recent changes in guidelines would mean they'd only qualify for a 15-year license rather than a 30-year license. That means this, folks. The company dropping out means there's 3 bids left for 3 licenses, but it doesn't mean all 3 licenses will be rewarded. So you have to remember that. They're not just going to give it here to the final 3. Those final 3 are Steve Cohen's Hard Rock, which would be next to Citi Field, Bally's Bronx, as well as Queens Resorts World, which already exists as a limited casino and racetrack, so that would potentially expand. So, I think this opens up the real possibility that this is happening. The decision will vote on the awarding license in December. So we are 2 months away from finding out if this happens. And if this happens, they will break ground on Metropolitan Park potentially as soon as January. Without the license, the project would collapse. So, this is going to be intriguing. The question is, does this affect the Mets? It certainly does. You got to think this becomes a destination. If the Mets are winning and, they're spending money, and now you have a casino and a park across the street, you're going to have C.J. Abrams across the street playing blackjack, the night before a game or right after a game. If it's a 3-game series Tuesday night, you're going to see C.J. Abrams at the casino at 11 o'clock. Like, that's the reality. You're going to have opponents play. It's going to affect tickets, memorabilia. You're going to have so many people go from the casino to games. I think tickets are going to be harder to get because anytime there's a Met game, there's going to be people who go to the casino and say, "Yeah, let me catch a Met game." You're going to have a lot more fringe fans, people who aren't fans. You're going to have people who are Hard Rock bettors who are getting exclusive perks, maybe suites to go to games or betting. So it's going to make it tougher to get tickets at times. It's going to be better for Steve Cohen. Traffic's going to be a disaster. You're going to have the soccer stadium as well. So I think overall it's a good thing. There's going to be things to do. It's going to be the place to be. It's going to be a place to live. They're having apartments there. There's a lot of good parts of it, but there's a lot of money involved with this. So you're going to see a lot of change. Does it affect the Mets spending? I would think it's going to make them money, so I would think they spend a little more, but I don't think it's, they're already spending $300 to $350 million. Like, they're not going to go from $350 to $450 and pay the luxury tax. At some point, Steve Cohen will be tapped out, and the money they're going to have to put into this, they're not going to see the money back from that, for at least for a couple of years after it's built. So they're far away from monetizing off of this. You have to build it and put it together. But it's going to be fascinating. We'll see in December if it happens, but it looks like the lane is cleared. It feels like this is good to go. We'll see if the state officially approves it 2 months away from that. We will catch you tomorrow on Friday. The Mariners losing Game 3. We got a series now, 2-1. We got Game 3 in L.A. today, Brewers-Dodgers. Let's see if the Brewers can make it a series. And thank you for watching Mets Daily. Smash that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe. Share this channel with any Mets fan you know. Scan that. Become a Mets Daily Insider. Cheaper than a cup of coffee, $5 a month. And I'm at Jake Brown Live. We'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.